Ukrainian troops have broken through Russian positions near Kherson, a strategic city in a part of southern Ukraine annexed by Moscow just last week. Now, this map gives an idea of recent Ukrainian advances in the Kherson region, shown with the darker purple shading there. There have also been claims that Ukrainian forces have captured parts of the west bank of the Dnieper River, almost halfway to Nova Kakhovka, but those haven't been confirmed. Ukraine has released a video of its forces raising flags in what it says is a liberated settlement in the Kherson region. According to President Zelensky, Ukrainian forces are currently pushing forward not only in Kherson but also in the eastern Luhansk region. Well, let's go to our correspondent Hugo Bashega, who's in Kyiv. And Hugo, just give us an overview of the gains that Ukraine seems to be making.
Yeah, Karin, we're talking about the most significant breakthrough for the Ukrainians in the south of the country since the start of this counter-offensive. For weeks, we've been talking about the fighting in the Kherson region, but no gains really and no changes in terms of military positions. Well, that has changed. The Ukrainians have managed to recapture several villages, and this morning we've had reports that this advance continues. They are making some gains along the Dnieper River, and that Russian forces have been forced to leave, to abandon some key positions there, with the Ukrainians reclaiming more territory. So some significant gains for the Ukrainians in the south, in the Kherson region, but also in the east of the country. The Ukrainians are reinforcing their positions, especially in Liman, that key town that was captured over the weekend, that was being used as a major logistics and transport hub by the Russians. The Ukrainians have taken back Liman, and that gives them a very good position to try to reclaim territory not only in Donetsk but also in Luhansk in the east of the country. And all these gains are happening in areas that President Putin said Russia was annexing. So strategic gains for the Ukrainians, but also very embarrassing for President Putin.
Hugo, there is real concern over what Russia may do, what tactics it may resort to because of these continued military setbacks, namely talk of use of a battlefield nuclear weapon. What has Russia been saying in response?
So I think there's been some speculation about a train that's been moving in Russia, apparently towards the border with Ukraine, a train from Russia's nuclear division. And I think there's been the fear that with the setbacks on the battlefield, the Ukrainians may use some kind of nuclear weapon. I think there is the fear since the annexation of those regions that the Russians may say, look, these areas are now part of Russia, and any attack on those regions will be seen as as an attack on Russia itself. But we heard from a senior Western official earlier today reacting to those reports, saying that there was no indication that anything out of the norm was happening as far as Russia's nuclear weapons are concerned, and that there was no indication of further movement of nuclear weapons beyond what is usual. So there have been reports that at this time of the year, Russia carries out some exercises with its nuclear weapons. So this Western official saying that nothing that is happening right now should raise concerns about the possibility of the Russians going ahead with the use of some nuclear weapons here in Ukraine.
Hugo, it's 5 days since Russia officially declared it had annexed those parts of Ukraine. There was that ceremony in Red Square, great fanfare, triumphant talk. But what stories are emerging from those areas now? There has been a big fear of enforced conscription of men living there to actually have to fight for Russia against Ukraine.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see the real life implications, perhaps, of those declarations by Moscow, the annexation of those regions. There have been reports that in some parts of the country under Russian occupation. People have been threatened with eviction, with losing their jobs if they do not accept a Russian passport. There have been reports of people being forced to join the Russian army. So these are the first accounts of what may be happening in those areas under Russian occupation. It is incredibly difficult to try to get a sense of what is happening there. It's difficult to talk to people living in those areas. Again, the Ukrainians say that nothing really changes in terms of the legality of what's been announced. They say that there's no legitimacy in those announcements, and that their response is to continue with this counteroffensive to take back territory that's now in Russian hands.
Hugo, thank you very much. Hugo Bashega, giving us the latest from Ukraine there in Kyiv.